My wife's best friend tried to kiss me. I have been happily married to my wife for 2 wonderful years. Before I even met her, my wife and her best friend had already shared a strong bond that has lasted over 15 years, which speaks volumes about the depth of their friendship. This connection between them began long before I entered the picture. To be completely honest, I have never seen or noticed any indication that my wife's best friend harbors any romantic feelings toward me. Throughout the course of our interactions, there has never been a moment where her behavior seemed inappropriate or suggestive in any way. In fact, her demeanor has always been respectful and genuinely friendly. On several occasions we have found ourselves alone together, yet not once has she ever tried to cross any boundaries or make a move. Our relationship has always remained purely platonic, built on mutual respect and understanding, and I have always viewed her solely as my wife's dear and trusted friend. Her friend, I will call her Lynn for obvious reasons. Lynn and I have been close. Not that close, but close enough to consider each other as friends, and I didn't have a problem with it, neither did my wife. Lynn, my wife's best friend, visits us regularly, almost every week or at least twice a month, depending on her schedule. During her visits, we often enjoy each other's company. While my wife doesn't drink, both Lynn and I do, so it has become a bit of a tradition for us to share a drink or two whenever she's over. It's a casual and enjoyable way to relax and spend time together. Sometimes she brings her boyfriend along, which adds to the dynamic of our gatherings and makes them lively and fun. Other times she comes alone, and the atmosphere remains equally pleasant and comfortable. Her visits are always welcome, as they bring a sense of camaraderie and warmth to our home. However, 2 days ago, Lynn showed up at our home in a state I had never seen her in before. She was heavily intoxicated. She was so drunk that she could barely walk properly, and I was genuinely shocked at how she even managed to drive herself to our place in that condition. It was concerning and alarming to say the least. As soon as I saw her, I asked her to come inside so she could get off her feet and settle down. The moment she stepped in, she started crying so intensely that I was immediately overwhelmed with worry. Her sobbing was uncontrollable, and I couldn't help but fear that something truly terrible must have happened to her. The sight of her in such a vulnerable and distressed state left me at a loss, and I knew I needed to find out what was going on to help her in any way I could. I tried my best to comfort her, offering soothing words and attempting to calm her down, but before I could say much, she suddenly hugged me tightly. Through her sobs, she started saying over and over that she wished she could find a man like me. Her words were filled with sadness and frustration, as she vented about how all of her boyfriends had dumped her and how she felt unlucky in love. Much of what she said came out as incoherent gibberish, a mix of slurred words and emotional outbursts. I stood there, frozen and unsure of what to say or do, but I decided to let her express herself without interrupting. It was clear she needed to release all the pain she had been carrying, and I chose to simply be a quiet presence, letting her vent and hoping it would help her feel even a little bit better. But suddenly she started kissing me and I was shocked for a moment, but I shook her off of me and asked her what that was about. She said she was sorry and I asked her to stay away. She kept crying and apologizing, but I asked her to stay away. After a lot of talking and allowing her to vent, it became clear to me that she was in no condition to drive herself home. Concerned for her safety, I decided to take her home myself. I made sure she was settled before leaving, and when I got back, I noticed that Lynn's car was still parked outside. Shortly after, my wife returned and immediately asked why Lynn's car was there. I explained the situation to her, recounting how Lynn had shown up drunk, extremely emotional and upset, and how I had to take her home since it wasn't safe for her to drive. However, I left out one critical detail. I didn't mention the part where Lynn kissed me during her emotional outburst. I didn't know how to bring it up or if I even should, but at that moment, I decided it was best not to include it in what I told my wife. Since then, Lynn has been texting me a lot and giving me a lot of explanation and begging me to not to tell my wife, and she will not repeat the same mistake, and she genuinely thinks it was a mistake, or so I think. She keeps saying that if I do tell my wife she will lose her best friend. I haven't replied to her yet and I didn't tell my wife either. Right now, I find myself feeling incredibly scared and conflicted about what to do. On one hand, I don't want my wife to lose her best friend, especially if what happened was truly a genuine mistake made under the influence of alcohol. Lynn was absolutely undeniably drunk, so much so that it's hard to believe she even had a clear grasp of her actions or words in that moment. It's not my place to judge her character entirely based on one drunken lapse in judgment, and I don't want to be the reason my wife loses someone who has been such an important part of her life for so many years. At the same time, though, I'm struggling with the moral weight of keeping this from my wife. I know deep down that hiding something like this could erode the trust between us, especially if the truth ever comes out later through some unforeseen circumstance. If that were to happen, my wife would probably feel betrayed, not just because of what happened but because I chose not to tell her. I feel completely stuck in this situation. I don't want to hurt her, and the thought of causing her pain tears me apart. But at the same time, I'm questioning whether withholding this information might end up causing even more harm in the long run. I keep telling myself that it's not like I had an affair or crossed any major boundaries with intent. This was a single moment, influenced entirely by alcohol and emotions spiraling out of control. If we can move past it, bury it, and make sure Lynn and I keep a respectful distance moving forward, then maybe it's possible to leave this in the past and protect my wife from unnecessary hurt. Still, I can't shake the feeling of unease. Is it really the right thing to do to bury it? Would it be better to come clean and face whatever consequences follow, even if it means hurting the person I love most? The weight of this dilemma is heavy, and I can't seem to find a clear path forward. He has posted update on December 11, 2024. I decided to tell my wife everything. I thought about it a lot and decided that I should tell her everything instead of hiding it. After spending a lot of time reflecting, trying to figure out how to navigate through this whole situation, I finally made the decision to tell my wife everything. I knew deep down that keeping something like this from her wasn't the right choice, even though I had hoped it would blow over without causing too much harm. So, I gathered the courage to sit down and explain everything that had happened, the full story from when Lynn showed up at our house drunk to how I helped her and ultimately, how I had to drop her off after she was unable to drive. I was honest about everything except the kiss, which I had kept to myself out of fear of causing unnecessary pain. When I told my wife, her reaction was nothing like I expected. She was absolutely furious, pissed off in a way that I had never seen before. The anger in her voice was sharp and unmistakable, and I could feel the tension in the air. She asked me over and over why I hadn't told her sooner, why I kept this from her. It was clear that she felt deeply betrayed, and the hurt in her eyes made me realize just how much I had messed up by holding back the truth. She couldn't understand why, if I had the chance to be honest with her, I chose not to be upfront right away. Her disappointment was palpable, and I could feel the weight of her emotions pressing down on me. I told her that I was scared, and I was really torn about how to handle the situation. I had hoped that maybe I could just keep it all hidden and avoid any fallout, thinking that it would be better to keep the peace and not tell her about the kiss. I didn't want her to lose her lifelong friend over a mistake that wasn't entirely within my control. But as I thought more about it, it became clear to me that if I continued to hide the truth, I might end up losing her instead, and I didn't want that. I realized that protecting our relationship and the trust we had was far more important than trying to avoid difficult conversations. I didn't want to risk losing her over something I could have been honest about from the start. My wife, in her shock and anger, asked me if I had ever cheated on her. I quickly reassured her, telling her that I had never cheated and I never would. It was important to me to make that clear. But then she started crying, and through her tears she asked how I could betray her like that when she trusted me so much. It was heartbreaking to see her in so much pain, and I immediately reached out to hug her. I told her as gently as I could that I never betrayed her and I never will. I was coming clean with her now because I didn't want to lose her. I was just as shocked as she was when Lynn kissed me. I didn't encourage it, I didn't want it, and I certainly never intended for it to happen. But it did, and I knew I had to be honest with her, even if it was the hardest thing I've ever done. After my wife stopped crying and began to compose herself, she gave me a stern look and laid down some firm boundaries. She told me that I was no longer allowed to talk to any of her friends, including Lynn, and that I had to stay away from other women altogether, except for our family members. I could tell she was deeply hurt and needed to establish clear lines to protect herself and our relationship. She was trying to take control of the situation, and I understood why she felt the need to do so. Her trust had been shaken, and she was putting measures in place to rebuild it, or at least to protect herself from further disappointment. Then my wife asked me to block Lynn, which was another hard blow for me. I had never imagined that things would escalate to this point, but I didn't argue. I knew she was asking for this because she felt betrayed and needed reassurance that I was committed to respecting her boundaries. When I asked her what she planned to do about Lynn, she responded calmly, saying it was between her and Lynn, and that I didn't need to worry about it. It was clear that she was handling things in her own way, and she didn't want me involved in whatever steps she decided to take moving forward. I respected her wishes, even though I had no idea how everything would unfold from here. Then my wife demanded an open phone policy and complete transparency from me, which I knew was something she needed to feel secure again. She made it clear that from this point forward, I had to be fully transparent about everything, and she had the right to check my phone, messages, and anything else she wanted to ensure that I was being honest with her. I agreed without hesitation because I understood why she was asking for it. After all, she had every right to feel uncertain after everything that had happened, and I wanted to do whatever it took to rebuild her trust. Then she told me that if I ever tried to hide anything from her again, no matter how small or insignificant it might seem, she would leave me. She said she couldn't be with someone who wasn't fully honest and open with her, and if I ever betrayed that trust again, our marriage would be over. I agreed to this too because I never want to find myself in a position where I would lie or hide anything from her. I realized just how serious this was, and I committed to doing everything I could to prove to her that she could trust me. It wasn't easy to hear, but I knew it was necessary, and I was willing to do whatever it took to make things right and avoid hurting her again. I have no idea what exactly happened between my wife and Lynn or what they talked about when they had their conversation, and my wife refuses to tell me anything about it. Every time I ask, she simply says it's none of my business, which only leaves me feeling more uncertain and confused about the situation. She's still incredibly upset with me, and I understand why. I'm trying everything I can to make her happy again, doing whatever it takes to show her that I'm truly sorry for the hurt I caused. This has led me to do some things I never thought I would do, like engaging in private activities that I find deeply uncomfortable and embarrassing. I've never been the kind of person who would do these things, but I'm doing it because I want to make her happy and fix what's broken. At least for now, it seems like my efforts are having some effect, as my wife is still with me, and though she's angry, she's not planning to leave. I truly don't know what else I could have done. I feel like I've given everything I have to make this right. I came clean to her, told her the truth about everything, and did everything she asked of me. I've put in all the effort I possibly can to show her that I want to earn back her trust. Despite all my efforts, she's still angry, which is understandable, but at least she's here with me and not leaving, at least not yet. The fear of making another mistake and losing everything hangs over me, and I'm doing my best to avoid making any more stupid decisions that could cost me my marriage. It's a hard place to be in, but I know that I need to keep proving that I can be the husband she deserves. Let's see some relevant comments. First comment was, why is she pissed at you? You literally didn't do anything from what you've written here. I think it's time for couples counseling to address why she's blaming you for her friend's betrayal. His reply to first comment, probably because I didn't tell her the truth and tried to hide it from her, I don't blame her. Second comment was, what does kissed mean in this context? A quick peck on your cheeks or a long kiss on the lips with more involved? Crucial info regarding why she is mad at you. His reply to second comment, she was drunk and kissed me on lips until I pushed her away from me. I dropped her off to her cause I couldn't let her drive when she couldn't even walk properly. Second comment reply to his response, that doesn't really explain the expectation that you have no contact with women outside the family. She's taking this a bit too far and trying to address the bad behavior of others by controlling you. His reply to second comment is, yeah, I know she's taking it too far, but can I blame her? She's obviously hurt because she trusted me and her friend to the point she was comfortable with us both spending time together even when we are alone. At best I can do right now is agree to her demand until my wife calms down. I tried to hide it from my wife, but I was scared that it might blow up in my face, and now that I came clean it still blew up in my face, so best I can do is let her calm down, and until then I do what she asks. Way better than losing my wife for something I didn't even do. Thank you so much for listening story to the end. If you enjoy our videos, so don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Have a good day, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it and hit the notification bell icon to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.